Haley Leva. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Rape Prevention Education Program Manager at the Orange County Rape Crisis Center. So similarly to the Compass Center, we offer a variety of services from crisis intervention to education and support in that way in the classrooms and with parents. So yeah, if you end up having questions about the things that we do, feel free to let us know at the end or get in touch via email. But similarly to Leslie, I see young people in the classrooms and outside of the classrooms and do parent trainings and professional trainings and those sorts of things. Great. So some objectives we have for this hour we have with y'all are for you to learn communication, online safety, and socially distanced dating tips and how to communicate them to your young people. It's our big one. And for you to practice discussing these topics related to relationships and dating with your young people and to learn where to find some more information. All right. So we're gonna get started with an activity just to get y'all thinking about, getting back into the headspace of a middle schooler or high schooler and what that was like, just to sort of build some empathy around these topics. So we're gonna put you all into some breakout rooms, and I'll send these questions in the chat so you'll have them because you might not be able to see them anymore. So you're just gonna reflect on what your first crush was like and what that felt like and who that was for you. And what did dating mean to you in middle school or high school? So Leslie, I believe, is gonna get us into some breakout rooms and you'll get a chance to chat about those things with each other.
Alrighty, breakout rooms should be open, so definitely let me know if you don't see anything, but we'll give you just a few minutes to join.
I need to copy and paste these real quick. So it's 6:09 right now. We'll go to 6:05-ish or 15.
So folks who are still in our main room, let me know if you're having trouble going into rooms or anything, but you should have a pop-up that just came up on your screen. And that's a great question in the chat. This part is not going to be recorded, but the rest of our presentation will, but not this. So actually I'll pause it.
Or that you shared that that was interesting or was a nice throwback.
Nobody in my chat had really done much dating or any real dating in high school or middle school.
Yeah.
And really, we didn't remember a whole lot.
I think a big range about for when dating kind of starts. Someone shared a memory of dances. That was a big flirting time. Yeah, some people are sharing it started early. Hanging out in groups. Note passing, no texting. Also makes sense. Wait for maybe one more response. Going out with a boy, met standing vaguely near him in the hallway and not actually talking to each other, going on dates. That makes sense. And yeah, also I hear that we had a lot of different experiences with dating in our middle and high school years, and I think that's pretty typical, and we're all across the board. And then that's probably true for what your young people are going through too. I'm sure some of them are really interested in dating right now and excited to do that, and some it might be a little bit further down the line. And we know that there are tons of barriers, COVID related and not, to having those relationships right now. All right. So this helps us to kind of frame where we're going with this presentation in terms of, social distancing, virtual dating, all of these things that are coming up around the time we're in, and what kind of relationships are accessible to young people right now. So we've moved a lot of our social interaction online, and that means that sex, relationships, dating, all of that looks really different than how it did in person. And so we might be a little less skilled in advising our young people around this. And that's where hopefully we're able to share some of what we've learned, talking to young people about these topics. So we're going to start out with some basic communication tips to share with your youth. The first is don't say anything online that you wouldn't say in person. So this one's pretty straightforward. It all comes down to, being respectful and not making people feel uncomfortable online, and using the golden rule of like, don't say anything you wouldn't want said to you, or if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it online, just like you wouldn't say it in person. And advising your kids to remember that everything online is public and permanent. Public meaning that they don't really have a lot of control over who's able to see it, even though we can mitigate some of that having public accounts on social media, only sharing certain content with certain people. So we have those couple layers of control, but at the same time, people can screenshot things, people can share things, and we can think about apps like Snapchat, where it tells us that it's not permanent and it's only up there temporarily. But again, people find ways around those things. So teaching kids to be proud of what they post, and not posting things that are gonna that they're going to feel weird about later, essentially, because things are never always private and never completely temporary. So being mindful and giving grace. So being mindful of sort of what we're saying online, like we've been saying, and also giving grace to others, because we know that tone cannot come across always in the way we want it to online or through text. It's really hard to know what's going on behind a screen without getting the full picture of people's nonverbals and their tone and their facial expressions and their body language. That gives us so much information about what someone's trying to communicate, and we just don't have that. So being mindful that that's the case when you're trying to communicate with someone online, and being understanding if someone's not coming off the way they intend to, and holding a little bit of space for that is good to advise young people when it can feel high stakes. All right, so now we're going to get into some online safety advice for young people for you to share. All right, so avoiding sharing personal information online. So we know online is a great place for young people to connect with each other, but there are certain risks associated with it sometimes. And we want to talk to kids about online engagement in ways that are non-shaming and not scary and not sort of fear-mongering, but at the same time helping them to be aware of the fact that there are risks and there are safety considerations. And so sharing things like your address or what school you go to, things like that, and not, meeting up with people online that you have not met in person, that those are considerations that they should be making. Here we go. Okay. So if you feel unsafe, tell someone, right? So part of the skills that we try to teach are around becoming and staying an approachable kind of parent that kids want to come to and are the primary person that they go to around issues of safety and sexuality and engagement online. So yeah, establishing yourself as a safe person that kids want to come to when something happens online that makes them feel unsafe and uncomfortable is really important, and kind of constantly reinforcing that that's what you're there for. Be mindful of who you're talking to and where you're talking. Yeah, so again, online can be a great place for kids to find community and to find friends and engage with one another. But there's always that risk that a person that they're talking to that they've never met in real life is not who they claim to be. And so it's sitting down with your young people, talking about your values related to online engagement, and setting up limits for that, and teaching them to be aware. All right, so I think we're going to turn it over to Leslie for a discussion question.
Yeah, so we're just going to talk about this for a few minutes, but hopefully the 6 tips that Haley just covered were pretty familiar to all of you already, and maybe it's something that you're already chatting about with your young people. Maybe they're getting some of this at school already, right? But we want to both acknowledge that, you know, technology is a part of young people's lives at this point, and it's not always the big, bad, horrible thing that I think a lot we're afraid of all the time, right? There are positive, wonderful reasons for young people who to connect with others, right? To use the internet to find information that they couldn't otherwise, right? However, we also want to hold the reality that, or acknowledge the reality that it's a scary place, right? So this question is, how can we both validate young people's desire to connect online and to receive that information while encouraging them to do it safely? So I'd love to hear some responses in the chat. Or if you'd like to, you can raise your hand and you can unmute if you'd like. These will be recorded though, so just kind of be aware of what you're sharing. But I'd love to hear, how can we hold both of these how can we hold both of these kind of contrasting ideas? Any thoughts? Okay, so someone in the chat offers open discussions. Yeah, absolutely. So I even think in response to Renee's comment there up above, even, it can feel like we just want to shut down all the, our young people's opportunities by, blocking as much as we can, and which I think is important. And I think having some of those conversations in your family to determine kind of what that is going to look like for your family is great, right? And at the same time, no matter how much blocking we do, there's still potential that they could be unintentionally accessing things either at friends' houses or, just at school or places where we're not around, right? We're not around as parents. So having these open discussions about responsible tech use is super important, and we'll have more in our upcoming sessions. We'll talk more about that. I'm hearing other folks in the chat saying that we share our own experiences. Yeah, definitely. So sharing, how we kind of figure out what is right and wrong on the internet and which sources are reliable or not. Someone else offered exploring online spaces together. I love that. I think that's absolutely key to this. Showing them reliable sites to go to where they can find information about various topics, particularly sexuality topics. And some of you might feel at a loss for those, and so don't worry, we'll get there. We will be sharing some resources towards the end where you can start kind of exploring some sexuality topics online together. I hear someone else in the chat is sharing, I find it very hard to balance my awareness of online environments with the reality of its presence in kids' lives. And I think that's so real. Thank you for sharing that. I think the internet feels terrifying. It's just so open and we feel like we don't have control, right? But if we can set up this relationship to technology in a way that feels healthy and responsible and safe to our young people, then if they do come across something that they're like shocked by, or it's they don't know what they're seeing, or it feels dangerous, right? Then they can come to you because you've already set up a space where you're having conversations about these things. I hear somebody else in the chat saying discussions about how we need full transparency, not because we don't trust them, but because we don't necessarily trust the others they may be encountering. Talking about warning signs they should come to us about sexuality, extremism, etc. Yes, absolutely. Sexuality specifically, probably like nudity or pornography or things like that. But sexuality in general, is a really wide topic and not at all unhealthy. Just certain aspects of it can be not age appropriate, right? My daughter won't say much to me, so it always seems like I'm giving her a speech. Yeah, and I think that's tough, right? To try to create a relationship where we're an askable parent and our young person feels like they want to open up to us, particularly when they start hitting those teenage years and they want nothing to do with us anymore, right? How can we still create a space where they feel like they can talk to us and they'll come to us? And how can we prepare them for those teenage years, perhaps, where, if you're starting to have some of these conversations earlier. I know some folks here have younger kids too. How can you start these conversations earlier so you can continue to let them know that you want to have these conversations and that you trust them with bringing questions and concerns to you. So I think it is a challenging balance for sure. And thank you so much for everybody for sharing in there. Haley, I want to move to the next slide, and we're going to actually dive into some specific dating topics now, because the pandemic for all of us, not just young people, has been rough in terms of personal interaction, right? And interpersonal connections and communication. So we have a couple tips for you on how to chat more about dating and relationships in this time. So the first one is knowing the COVID safe sex guidelines. So the New York, the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene actually created some of these guidelines. Is the animation not working, Haley?
We click again and see if it will.
Oh, there it is. Cool. Perfect. Yeah. So these are some that I feel like are most applicable during this time. So like I said, these are from the New York City Health Department. And they've offered these COVID safe sex guidelines. And the first one is that you are your safest sex partner, right? So masturbation, sex toys, things like that. That's COVID friendly, right? That's COVID safe. And so of course you're going to have to kind of weigh that with your family's values about masturbation and pleasure and touching yourself and things like that. But it is, in terms of COVID, safe. Okay. And pregnancy and STIs, I'll throw in there as well. The second, washing your hands. I think this is still, we're hearing this all over the place that we need to be washing our hands, right? And so making sure that we're washing our hands before and after sex is even more important now during the pandemic. Again, making sure that it's long enough, to make sure that we're preventing any kind of that. Selective kissing. So, kissing can easily pass COVID-19, as we know. So avoiding kissing anyone who is not part of your pod, right, is going to be important. And then kind of just in general, these are some ways to, some things to be aware of if young folks are deciding to engage in sex, but also it's pretty hard if, it puts your family, your pod at risk if a young person is going out, or anyone, not even just a young person, is going out of the COVID pod to, hang out with a significant other. So pressing pause is also something that many of us have had to do during this time. So just abstaining from sexual intercourse, and especially abstaining if you or your partner feels sick. So those are just from the New York Health Department, some basic tips there. So we'll go to the next one. And this one is really important, and we wanted to make sure that we touch on this because in the pandemic, we are wanting, lacking connection. We're not seeing people, we're not seeing our friends. And so sexting is one of the ways that young people and, folks of all ages, but especially young people, are finding, they feel like it's a safe way to, have some sexy time with a significant other that they can't see in person. However, making sure that your young person understands sexting laws is going to be really, really important. So the not a lot of teens know this, and it's only kind of, sometimes it's covered in schools, sometimes it's not. So bringing up this topic is really important. So you can kind of explain, sexting might seem fun. It feels like it's a safe thing. However, in North Carolina, it's actually considered a felony to create, share, or keep explicit images of people under the age of 18. This is actually considered child pornography and falls under child pornography laws. So minors can get in a lot of trouble for sexting. Even if it's between two consenting young people, even if it's yourself, they can get in a lot of legal trouble. So there are lots of ways for young people to show that they care about somebody, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But I wanted to kind of, often when I talk to parents about the sexting laws, they're like, "Oh my goodness, like how do I talk about this? This is so important." And so we wanted to share a video from a great resource called amaze.org. And amaze.org has tons of informational videos about sex and sexuality geared towards young people, primarily elementary school and middle school, but some of them are appropriate for high school aged youth as well. And so we're just going to show a tiny little bit of this video, which is about sexting. And it's specifically a parent bringing up the topic with their young person. So Haley's going to get us started. We're going to kind of only show a tiny little clip of it. So give us a second to find the spot.
Chris, what's this text about?
What text? Oh, that. It's nothing.
Feeling attracted to someone is a perfectly normal part of growing up.
Dad.
No, Chris, you need to listen. There are way more respectful ways to show someone you like them. And beyond that, asking someone to send naked pictures on your phones is very dangerous.
What? How?
There could be legal consequences. It's actually considered child pornography in some states. At the very least, it's sexual harassment. You need to make this right.
Hey, Mabel. Can I sit next to you?
Haley.
Sure.
I want.
So the rest of the video goes on, and you see kind of more about the relationship or whatever. And so the young person kind of makes it right with his partner. But I wanted to show this little tiny clip of it where the parent is trying to explain to the kid how serious this is, right? And so you can use this as a model for your own conversations, right? You can use this video to help prompt it. You can use some of the same language that you heard as a way to just bring up the importance of this topic, and also not shame them or freak them out for doing something that's a kind of a pretty natural, normal need, wanting to be close to another human, thinking that this is the way to do it, right? So how can we kind of navigate that? By having this conversation. So something else that can be really helpful is to, if your young person is dating or interested in dating, is to get creative with date ideas. And I think this is, we're seeing this across the board, both with young people and older people, that there are lots of ways to show that you care about someone and to remain socially distanced and still, have a really great time and be able to connect with someone. So I wonder if you all can help me brainstorm actually in the chat. I'd love to hear about some ways that, some creative date ideas that are both COVID safe, or like you can do masks on and you can socially distance. So what are some different options of things that we could, like age appropriate, so youth appropriate suggestions for date ideas? So I'm seeing backyard bonfires. Yes, absolutely. What else do we have in the chat? Hikes. Yep, going for a hike. And making sure you bring your mask with you, and oh, there's lots of things coming up. Yeah, so definitely hikes, walking, urban mural tour. Okay, Megan, if that's a thing in the Triangle, like give us some more deets because that sounds awesome. I love that. Online gaming, absolutely. Online gaming is huge, and my partner's actually been playing so much more video games these days and able to find connection that way, right? Picnics, walking, biking, outdoor movies on a computer screen or projector. Minecraft, yeah, so more computer games. FaceTime movie dates, yeah, so like watching a movie together and FaceTiming while you do it. That's wildly popular with young people especially. outdoor Minecraft. Okay, tell me more about that too. I didn't know that you could play Minecraft outdoors, or is it like you just play Minecraft outdoors, or is like a whole thing? Oh, sitting outside and playing together. Okay, I was like, what? Tell me more. I need to know. Yeah, so like sitting outside and playing video games, and that's going to be easier as the weather as the weather gets better here. Minecraft Earth. I don't know what that is, so also tell me more. But yeah, I mean, so there are lots of different ways, right? I mean, encouraging them to like write a love letter, right? Like do like a snail mail thing, right? Ice skating, I see. Geocaching. Ooh, that's super creative. I remember doing geocaching. For those who aren't aware, it's like where you like go and find these like time capsules that are buried like all over the place. And there's like, I think you just go to like, I don't know, search geocaching and they'll like come up with a map or something for you. But yeah, that's a super great idea too. Just having a virtual date, dressing up and like doing dinner, like your respective dinners. I think folks already said like walking and hiking. You could like buy their favorite food, right? Or drop off food for them and share something that way. And I think just generally encouraging our young people to get to know each other, to use this time to get to know each other. So, we might not be able to be in person. A lot of, some families have chosen to allow their young person to be in a pod with their significant other, and others have not been able to do that. And so, if you're not able to see your partner, then how can you use this time to, play 30 questions and really get to know each other, or talk about, needs and wants for the relationship and safety issues and, all sorts of different things that you can talk about. And I know that adults are using this time to kind of have some of these deeper conversations as well. So we're going to go on to the next tip, which is the one I was just bringing up, which is talk it out. So as I've kind of shared, lots of folks are using this time to chat about things. So what are some in the chat again? I want to hear from you all. What are some specific things? I sort of mentioned a few that couples, specifically teen couples, can be talking about during the quarantine. So what are some things that they could talk about during this time that would be helpful for when they are able to go back in person and date in person again? What are topics that we feel like would be useful for them to talk about? Okay, talking about school, perhaps. Yeah. What other ideas do we have in the chat? Hopes and dreams, summer plans, biking. Yeah, and even more specifically, of course, they could talk about like absolutely anything, right? But specifically to their relationship, like what are those deep dives that they can do that they, don't necessarily, it feels like they get wound up in the physicality of it all, right? The hormones and the desire, right? And so they don't take the time to have these conversations. So yeah, someone put relationship expectations. Exactly, right? So what do they expect out of the relationship? What do they want, right? What they've missed in the pandemic versus reality. Yeah, expectations versus reality, perhaps. Relationships, consent, future goals, safe sex. Plans for school next year. Yeah. Exactly. So they can talk about some of these safety techniques to make sure that they, are being safe. They can talk about if they're interested in like what sexual behaviors they're interested in doing or not. The safety considerations for those. They can be talking about their hopes for, for the relationship and where they'd like to see it go, or what they need or what they're looking for in a relationship. Yeah, so there's some sexuality specific topics that we can encourage our young people to bring up with their partner, to use this time to really talk it out, as opposed to, since they're not able to see each other in person.
Right. Yeah, so this has been great. This has provided a really good framing for sort of where we're at and where we can take these conversations with young people during this time. And I assume if you came here tonight, you're wondering how the heck do I talk to my kids about this stuff, right? This is really getting into the skills and the important stuff that y'all came for. So here are some quick tips that we like to share. So first, starting with a lot of listening, getting an idea of exactly what your young person or your child is thinking about and experiencing. And to our second point, asking questions about those things. So I think these two skills can really mitigate that fear of being seen as a lecturing parent or seem like you're talking at your kid rather than with them. So leading with listening and asking questions really helps to set the tone that this is a dialogue and you're actually invested and curious about what they're wondering about and thinking about and experiencing, rather than it being this one directional thing where, you know, you're the authority figure talking down to your kid who's actually experiencing it. So you really do want to know what they're experiencing, and it's important to communicate that to them. So this third one, talk about your values. So while we can give all the advice in the world related to our experiences with your young people in the classrooms, ultimately we are not a part of your families, and each family has different values and ways of communicating that are unique to you. So it's taking this information and translating it and filtering it through how you are as a family and what you believe. And being open and honest about with age appropriate information. There can be some anxieties around like, what is, you know, developmentally appropriate, what's too mature, what's too baby for where my kid is at. And I think a way to mitigate that again is starting with our first two, like listening to exactly where they're at and see what's coming up for them and responding to that, and not taking it to places where they haven't, you know, brought it to yet. And I think a lot of the resources that we share at the end will give you a ballpark of sort of what topics are appropriate at certain ages. But again, just like leading with listening and responding to things as they're coming up. Avoiding judgment and preaching. Again, being part of being an approachable parent is not, you know, establishing yourself as this authoritarian person who's here to lay down the law when it comes to dating and sexuality, but really someone who is human and a person who's also been through these things. I think someone sharing your own experiences when it comes to technology. I think that's really, really great advice and really humanizing, and helps you to kind of level with them and have a true and real conversation. It's okay not to know. And it's okay to tell your kids that you don't know sometimes. I think that again, just brings the conversation back down to earth, and helps them to realize that we're all people just feeling our way through this thing. And it's okay to say, like, I don't have a great answer for you right now, but I'm gonna, you know, look into some things and get back to you, and we're gonna have a conversation about it. So that gets us to knowing your resources. So we're going to share a lot of those things at the end, and can always follow up with more. Yeah, some really good go-to places to get information about sexual health and dating as it relates to teens. All right, so we're going to shift gears a little bit and get to the part where you all get to practice this stuff. So we're going to go through some scenarios. It looks like we have about 15 minutes left. I think we have 4 scenarios. So I think we might have time to get through them all, but if not, we can just pick the most exciting ones. So you can either raise your hand or put something in the chat how you might respond to this. But our first one is, your 15-year-old comes to you begging to let them see their boyfriend. The boyfriend is not currently in your COVID pod, meaning that seeing him would increase your family's risk of COVID exposure. How might you respond to your 15-year-old? Yeah, ask if the boyfriend could get tested. That's a great one. Invite the boyfriend to a socially distanced event. Yeah. Yeah, getting to a lot of that really great advice Leslie gave us. Ask about I'm assuming the boyfriend's practices about COVID. Yeah, that's a great one. I think what's been something that's been really helpful to me during the pandemic is just doing a ton of communication with people if I'm planning to see them in person about what their practices are, how we can mitigate risk. Explain the science. Yeah, so the science around COVID and how it's transmitted. Yeah, just starting really basic with information. Be welcoming, collaborate, ask questions. How will you be COVID safe? I think these are really great ideas. Families come up with a joint contract. Ooh, I love that. Yes. So coming to an agreement with between both families about how to keep one another safe and ourselves safe. Yeah, and I think back to my earlier point, like just doing as much communication as possible is kind of the thread through your different answers. Catherine says, just be friends, always an option. I've heard of some pods creating a memorandum of understanding. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. These are great ideas. Thanks. So we'll move on to our next one. Scenario 2. So your 17-year-old's phone goes off and you notice they've received a text asking for a naked picture. How would you respond to this one? Definitely a tricky one. Catherine says no thanks. Fair response reaction. How would you communicate your no thanks? Try to explain possible consequences. Yeah, again, to Leslie's point about making sure your child has the information about sexting laws. Ask about it. Kids joke around all the time. Yeah. So before you come in guns a-blazing, ready to lay down the law, just like lead with some curiosity. Like, what was that about? Kind of like what we saw in the video. Yeah, asking your child if she needs help. Stacy, I love your family style. Yeah, so infusing some humor into the situation can definitely, if that's like how your family communicates, totally. Talk to him or her and understand what's going on first. Yeah, I love this advice about like clarifying what the situation is before coming in, ready to lay down the law. Leslie says, use the Amaze video to start a conversation. Love it, love it. What else? Stacy seems like a great resource. Yeah, so I think contact the other child's parents, sure. I think it can be a combination of some of the strategies you shared, doing some communication with your child about just clarifying what the situation is before jumping to conclusions, opening a conversation about the risks and also, yeah, not being shaming or leading with fear, but really opening up that dialogue. Sounds dumb, but honestly, my first response would be to ask her how she feels about the request and what she knows about the person who sent it. Yeah, I love that. Being really curious about your child's own response to it. So we can have this assumption that teens are just sex crazed and wanting to do all this stuff. But if the person receiving this request, then it actually does not feel comfortable with that, that's really important information that you want. And then that leads us into a conversation about communication about boundaries. So that's a really great example, Allison, of how asking questions of your young person can really help you to get them the most relevant information that they need. Great job.
And I think Haley, sorry, before we go to the next one, I'll turn my camera on too. I just wanted to respond to the rest of Allison's, like if she says I feel excited, then freak out, right? And I think that is a really natural, normal response to have, especially as a parent, and we're like not wanting to think of our young people like engaging in any kind of sexual activity, right? That can be hard. However, thinking back to the alternatives to sexting or the COVID safe things that they could do, like how can we brainstorm like if they feel excited about receiving this sext, okay, here are some considerations that are some pretty serious considerations for a 17-year-old, a minor. What are some other ways that you could show that you're really into somebody? What are some other things that we could do that's not gonna put us at legal risk, right? So kind of helping your young person explore some of those, and they're gonna feel awkward about it, but that's okay. I mean, it can feel like an awkward conversation, but part of that brainstorming with them is gonna help them to have other options that feel safer, that feel more aligned with your family's values, that feel healthier. But having that conversation with them and giving them options, I think, is always important. So sorry, Haley, we can move to the next one.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so we're gonna do this last one and then move to some concluding thoughts, I think. So your typically very social 14-year-old has been looking pretty glum. They've been suffering from not seeing their friends during the pandemic. You approach them wanting to have a conversation about how they're feeling. How might you approach that? So not explicitly about dating, but definitely reflecting where a lot of kids are at right now. In the car with a milkshake, driving. Love that. This number 3 scenario is my actual life, so very interested to hear what other parents and the pros would recommend. Yeah, I love this advice about bringing up tough topics in the car while you're driving. I feel like my mom did that exact thing because I don't know, there's something that feels easier about talking when you kind of got your eyes on the road and you're not having to do this like direct, intense eye contact thing. Start talking about your own experiences with isolation, try to get them to talk. Yeah, I would be very surprised if there were people on this call who have not experienced feelings of loneliness and being bummed out due to lack of social interaction. So just empathizing on that level. Listen to how they feel. Start talking to them about how they might be able to safely see their friends. Yeah, getting back to that, those really great suggestions we heard from y'all about how to do things safely. Volunteer together. Yeah, and there's lots of ways to do that, especially right now with the ways our communities have been economically impacted. There's tons of mutual aid opportunities. I volunteer with a food drive once a week, and there's always like teens and their parents there volunteering, and definitely a great way to connect and give back. Go for a walk or swing and get the kid involved with ideas how to make things better for them. Yeah. Lots of hugs. I grew up in a very affectionate family, so if that's a way that you show love, have at it. Try to get their mind off of it, e.g. grades, video games, TV shows, whatever interests them. Yeah. So teaching some coping skills around how can we kind of self-soothe and make ourselves feel a little bit better rather than getting stuck in these challenging feelings once we're able to validate them. Mommy-daughter date. Create a safe environment to have them socialize with their best friends, masks, all that. Great job. All right, y'all. I think it's pretty clear. Have the wisdom. Y'all can do this. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Leslie for some resources.
Yeah, so I mean, you all already kind of, you're on the right track, right? All these suggestions are yours, and we're agreeing with you that, they are, I think the ways that you're going about them are great, right? Helping them explore different options, using opening up conversations, asking questions, right? Trying to provide spaces for them to share how they're feeling and help brainstorm suggestions together, right? One way that I really like to start conversations is through media. So like I shared already, those amaze.org videos are great starting, like, hey, can we sit down and watch this video together? I just want to see what your thoughts are about it and have a conversation about it. If the topics that we talked about today, you're like, I'm not even sure how to bring up some of these. We actually have a recorded, very mini version of this that is geared more towards youth, of this same presentation, that is geared towards youth. And so feel free, it's like a 10-minute little video. So feel free to use that. And it's, if you want to take a screenshot of this, this website, this is on the Compass Center's website. And feel free to use this little 10-minute clip to talk about internet safety and COVID safety practices. So some other resources that we have for you. This is a long list on the next page, but there's so much great stuff out there. So feel free to screenshot this. We can also send some out. Yep, we're happy to send out a copy of the slides. We'll be sending out the recording and the copy of the slides afterwards. But Sex Positive Families is like my favorite website in the whole wide world. And I think if you're interested in how to have more of these sex positive conversations, and you're looking for additional resources, they have sexpositivefamilies.com has first of all, tons of book lists, trainings, workshops for parents that are available. They also have a monthly newsletter that comes out, email newsletter, really helpful tips. Amaze.org, as I've said a million times already. Our Compass Center page, compasscenter.org/parents, has got some videos on how to start talking about things like anatomy, safe sex, dating, various tricky topics to discuss with youth. And so we've created some videos to kind of offer you some talking points with your young person. And Orange County Rape Crisis Center also has a YouTube page, which has got a ton of really great resources, as well as resources in Spanish, which is excellent as well. Advocatesforyouth.org is another great website, really good resources for parents and health information guides. For Goodness Sex is a great book to kind of help frame some of these topics. Definitely worth a read if you're interested in that. And then if you're looking for additional books, I think, in addition to using media, so using, videos to kind of prompt conversations, I think books are another excellent way to start conversations around sex, sexuality, mental health, lots of different things. So sexpositivefamilies.com has a really great sexuality book list that would be worth checking out as well. So to kind of finish it up today, we just want to let you know that this is just the start of the conversation. We have 3 other sessions. They're on the second Thursdays of every month, so from 6 to 7 p.m. And we're going to be covering topics like social media, sexting and responsible tech use. We'll be talking about media literacy and pornography, how to talk to our young people and about pornography and it's relatively easy accessibility on the internet, and how to make sure that our young people are feeling safe and healthy and learning about healthy boundaries related to sexuality. And then in May, we're going to be closing up with an LGBTQ identities and homophobic bullying session. So we definitely hope that you join us for those extra sessions. Haley has put a link to a feedback form in the chat. So we'd love to hear about your experience tonight with us, things that you liked, things that you wish we'd talked about, things that didn't work for you. Let us know there. And you can contact us on the next slide with any questions or concerns, but following this, we will send out the recording as well as the slide set and some additional resources. So thank you so much, everyone. If folks do have questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat, and I think Haley and I can stay at least for a few more minutes. But otherwise, please check out that feedback form. Haley can maybe put it in the chat again since it's going away with all the thank yous. You're welcome. Thanks for coming. So please, if you can, fill out that feedback form, and we will see you all at our next session, we hope. So someone asked, would I recommend attending these with your kids? I would not. These were specifically gearing this information to adults. So it's some of the things they talk about might not be age appropriate. So I would definitely recommend just coming yourself. Great question. Someone asked that one of the initial dates was on a Friday, but yeah, they're actually all Thursdays. That was a typo on our end, so apologies about that. So if there are any other questions in the, put them in the chat, please. We'd love to answer them. And if you can, fill out that feedback form. Otherwise, have a good night.
I'm thinking we can include the feedback form in our follow-up email too. This is not your last chance to participate.